The autumn sunlight filtered through the tall windows of Professor Henderson's anthropology classroom, casting long shadows across the wooden desks. 23 students sat in various states of attention, some furiously scribbling notes while others stared blankly at their laptops. Among them sat Emily Carter, a quiet junior with callous knuckles and a secret she rarely shared. Erling Johansson stood at the front of the class, his tall frame commanding attention as he delivered his presentation on human evolution and combat. With his blonde hair neatly combed and his pressed shirt tucked into dark jeans, he looked every bit the overachiever he was known to be. His voice carried confidence as he clicked through his PowerPoint slides. "And this is why," Erling declared, gesturing at an image of ancient weapons. "Humans have always relied on tools for combat. Unlike other predators, we don't have claws, fangs, or natural armor. We're physically inferior, which is precisely why we developed weapons. Humans simply don't fight barehanded. It goes against our evolutionary advantage." He paused, scanning the room with a slight smile, clearly pleased with his argument. Most students nodded along, their pens moving across notebooks. Professor Henderson leaned back in his chair, stroking his gray beard thoughtfully. From the third row, Emily's hand rose slowly into the air. Erling noticed the movement and nodded toward her. "Yes, you have a question." "Not a question," Emily said quietly, her dark eyes meeting his. "A challenge to your claim." The classroom fell silent. Even Professor Henderson sat up straighter, intrigued. Erling's eyebrows lifted slightly, his confident expression faltering for just a moment. "A challenge," he repeated. "You said humans don't fight barehanded," Emily continued, her voice calm but firm. "That's not entirely accurate. Humans have been fighting barehanded for thousands of years. Boxing, wrestling, Muay Thai, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, pankration in ancient Greece, these aren't new inventions. They're fundamental to human culture across civilizations." Erling's jaw tightened slightly. "Those are sports, not survival tactics. I'm talking about actual combat scenarios where lives are at stake." "So am I," Emily replied, standing now. The fluorescent lights caught the small scars along her knuckles, barely visible unless you knew to look for them. Bare-knuckle fighting has been used in warfare, self-defense, and ritual combat throughout history. The reason we developed weapons wasn't because we couldn't fight barehanded. It was because weapons gave us range and force multiplication. But take away the weapon, and humans are still incredibly capable fighters. A few students turned to look at Emily with newfound interest. Sarah, sitting beside her, whispered, "Girl, I didn't know you were into this stuff." Erling crossed his arms, his competitive nature flaring. "Theoretically, maybe. But practically speaking, most modern humans couldn't fight their way out of a paper bag without a weapon. We've become soft, dependent on technology. Most, perhaps," Emily acknowledged. "But not all." Professor Henderson leaned forward, his eyes gleaming with academic curiosity. "Miss Carter, do you have personal experience in this area?" Emily hesitated for just a moment. She had spent 6 years training in mixed martial arts at her uncle's gym, had competed in amateur circuits, had bloodied her knuckles and learned what her body could do when pushed to its limits. But she had always kept that part of her life separate from school, away from judgment and assumptions. "I do," she said finally. "I've trained in MMA for 6 years. I've competed, won some, lost some. And I can tell you that the human body, when properly trained, is an incredibly effective weapon on its own." The classroom erupted in whispers. Erling stared at her, his previous confidence cracking. He had pegged Emily as just another quiet student who never raised her hand, never drew attention to herself. Now she stood before him, challenging not just his presentation, but his entire premise. "That's impressive," Erling admitted, though his tone carried a hint of defensiveness. "But you're an exception, not the rule. My point still stands for the average human." "Your point," Emily said, walking toward the front of the class, "was that humans don't fight barehanded. Not that they can't. There's a difference. And historically, culturally, and practically, you're wrong." She stopped a few feet from him, and despite being several inches shorter, her presence seemed to fill the space. Every martial art, every fighting system humans have developed, started with understanding what our bodies could do without weapons. The jab, the cross, the takedown. The choke, these are human innovations just as much as the spear or the sword. Professor Henderson stood up, clapping slowly. Excellent discourse, both of you. Erling, your research on tool use was solid. But Miss Carter raises valid points about the complete picture of human combat evolution. This is exactly the kind of critical thinking I want to see. Erling's face flushed slightly, but he nodded. You're right. I overgeneralized. I should have said humans prefer weapons for combat efficiency. Not that they don't or can't fight barehanded. Emily extended her hand toward him. Your presentation was good. The weapon development timeline was thorough. I just thought the conclusion needed adjusting. Erling looked at her outstretched hand, then shook it firmly. Her grip was stronger than he expected. Maybe you could show me some of those techniques sometime, he said, a genuine smile replacing his earlier defensiveness. I clearly have some gaps in my understanding. Only if you explain the biomechanics of spear throwing, Emily replied, the hint of a smile touching her lips. Fair trade. As the class period ended and students packed up their belongings, Erling approached Emily at her desk. I mean it about learning from you, he said. I hate being wrong, but I hate staying ignorant even more. Emily studied him for a moment, seeing past the polished exterior to something more genuine underneath. My uncle's gym is downtown. Open mat on Thursdays. You should come by. I'll be there, Erling promised as Emily walked out of the classroom. Sarah caught up with her, eyes wide with excitement. Okay, who are you and what did you do with my quiet study partner? Emily laughed softly. I'm still me. I just don't let people get away with incomplete facts behind them. Erling gathered his presentation materials, already making a mental note to research everything Emily had mentioned. He had come into class thinking he knew everything about human combat evolution. He was leaving with a humbling lesson and an unexpected respect for the quiet girl in the third row, who had quietly lifted her hand and changed his entire perspective. Sometimes, the most important lessons came not from textbooks, but from those brave enough to challenge what we think we know.